So underneath round the back of the turbocharger there, where the exhaust fastens onto it, there's oil dribbling down. And on the bottom of there, we've got oil running. Now, when the engine's started, it gets hot up to temperature and I could see smoke coming down it, but there is a fair bit of oil coming down there. So if I go up to the top side, so I've got the intercooler taken off, and down underneath the throttle body on the top of the engine where the fuel lines go, there's the oil metering pump lines that inject oil into the bores to give it a little bit of lubrication. Now, I can't quite get the light on it, but the oil seems to be from around where they are. No, I can't get in to show. So I'm going to take the throttle body back off and have a quick inspection. So here we are again, looking at the oil leak from the top side. The upper intake manifold throttle body's been taken off, and you can definitely see oil down there under that fuel rail. There's a couple of puddles of it. Now what's down there is that the only bit that has oil in it is there's an oil metering pump down there, which has 4 small lines on it, which carry oil to 4 little injectors, 2 on the primary, 2 on the secondary. So they just squirt a little bit of oil in to lubricate the rotors. This is the secondary rail, secondary injectors, primary rails there with the primary injectors underneath it. And then so I have to take that primary rail off to get to the oil metering lines. They're just little plastic lines, and I'm assuming one of them's broken or cracked. You can see it there with the red vacuum line on one of them, and then the other one's there with the red vacuum line on it. Not easy to see. Down there. So there's 2 on the rotor there, 2 on that rotor there. So the throttle body's off and the fuel rails have come off now, and when you look down there you can see the 4 injectors, and they're the oil lines that come up, and that one's not connected, it's come off. So the oil metering pump is pumping oil up all of those fuel lines down those injectors to lubricate the rotors, which is the same as putting the premix oil in the fuel as well to try and give some lubrication in there. Now this obviously proves that the fuel lines are working, because it's pumping oil up into that little puddle and it's dribbling down the back there and it's going onto the turbo. Now, I don't think it explains why there's blue smoke in the exhaust. I don't think it's leaking into the exhaust, even though from the previous video you can see there's a nut missing. Not easy to catch on here, but there's a flange nut missing on the exhaust where it meets the manifold or the turbo, whichever bit it is. So these lines look pretty brittle. I don't know if I'll be able to fasten that one back on, or I might just try and get hold of some more thin tubing and remake them. The metering pump's just down at the bottom there, so it's not inaccessible. I've had it off there before. So yeah, another issue found. So there's the metering pump, oops, down there with the 4 pipes on it. 2 of them have been removed, 2 of them are still on, and then the hard lines come up and go through and then just onto there. It's not particularly difficult. There's just not a lot of room in there you can see there's a small bracket clamp holding them on there with a rusty nut, which was quite difficult to remove, but that's loose now. So once I've got that out, taken that metal retaining clip out, they should just slide out. So I'm just making a note of which one goes where. It's just a normal banjo fitting, and then there's the broken one. It's just snapped off, and it's just hard, brittle plastic pipe. These are the bits. The air pump had to come off to get access into the bottom of them, which is quite straightforward. A few bolts and take the belt off. Fuel rails, you've seen before. This is one of the OMP oil injectors, the one with the broken vacuum pipe on the top, and as the pipe sucks, I presume it just allows oil to squirt through. And it's got like a little banjo there, and then it's got like a crimp on. You can see the actual plastic pipes broken, so I think it warrants taking them all out and remaking them. I can get some pipe, but something like 3/16 outer. I don't think it needs to be particularly heat proof, although there's a bit of heat in there or high pressure. I'll see what's available. So my last theory for having the premix oil in the fuel causing the blue smoke coming out of the exhaust, I think is it's a load of rubbish. I think now we've discovered that the oil metering pipe that was connected on here was off. There was a puddle on the last video of oil in there. Now what I suspect is this is the lower intake manifold. That the upper one connects on there, and it just sends that down into there, but it's fastened on in that plane vertically, and it has a gasket. Has a gasket like that, and it's in that position. It might be that way around, but when it's in that position there, when I look down into the gap, I can see the edge of that gasket, and it's coming away. Now the puddle covered all of that area there. See the edge of the gasket there? The puddle covered all that, so I think that the intake is actually sucking oil down because there's not a lot of space for it to go. And this isn't, it's like a vinyl, it's not cardboard like I think it was, it's like a plastic. So if that's damaged or split in whatever way there, oil's getting down there out of that puddle and it's getting burnt, and that's what I think is causing the blue smoke now. So I could just put it back together and put the metering pump on and try it, but while we're this far down, I need to get this manifold off. And strangely enough, this gasket was in the car when I bought it, along with a few other Mazda bits and pieces. So in there's an exhaust manifold, an air pump and exhaust bolts. So it looks like somebody was already prepping up to do this job. And when I first got the car on first start up, I did notice that there was a fair bit of smoke coming up from around the turbos, if you remember on the previous video. But to get that off, it looks a bit of a pain, because there's 6 bolt holes on there. I can see the top 2 there and there, but the others, there's a little thing called a turbocharger which seems to be right in the way. So to get at that, I think the turbo is going to have to come out so I can get to the bolts. For the turbo to come out, the exhaust down there, which had one of the nuts missing, so I don't know whether that was the start of the job that was done. So I've taken the 3 bolts off. The exhaust has come out that way now, and it's dropped down, so it's free of that area. I've taken the inlet pipes off, I've drained the coolant out, so there's a coolant line down there. I've taken these two vacuum lines off, come on focus, undone the oil line. Now on the bottom of the turbo there's 4 big bolts that attach it to the engine. So I got to get those, they're not bolts, they're nuts, so take the 4 nuts off first. See if the turbo drops out of the way, then that should give me access to those. You see one of them down there, but there's no way I get a spanner or a socket on it. So that's where we are with that. I'm still waiting for some oil line coming from eBay that I've ordered, some 4mm pipe to make some new of these oil lines up. It's the old ones I've seen before. I don't think the other 3 are cracked in any way, but if it's easy enough to crimp them up. I've got some of these little double ear crimps, they call them. So you put that around it and just squeeze it closed with a pair of cores. That should do that. I've got some proper wire, double wire clamps for the power steering. These little screws are for the side mouldings, which are back on. So side mouldings are on there. On the edge along there, there's just little push studs, and then underneath is where those Torx bolts go. And then it's going to need a little bit of tiger seal just to hold that on there where the brackets have gone. The brakes have been bled. I had an assistant round the other day, we've done a 2-man bleed on it, got air out of the back, not so much out the front. Right, so I think that's enough for this session.